Hi, I'm Kelsey from Crafting for Weeks, and today I'm going to be showing you my favorite way to make a faux fur pom. The cool part about this tutorial is that you can use bulky yarn to tie off your poms. So you're going to start by cutting your fabric. Now this is a piece of faux fur fabric. This is about a 3-inch pile, and you're going to want to cut it from the back. By cutting it from the back, you're going to avoid cutting that fur pile. You're going to want to get your scissors right in there underneath of the fur, and you're going to want to do your best to avoid cutting off all that beautiful fluffy stuff. So I'm not actually going to cut this piece of fabric today, but I am going to show you how I would cut it. I would first measure it. I like 6-inch squares for my poms. You can mark it with a fabric marker, or you can just cut as you measure. Then you're going to want to get your scissors right in there under the pile and right above the fabric. I like to use small sharp scissors so that I can control my cuts better, but any sharp sewing scissors will work. Now, even though I prefer scissors, a lot of people like to cut their faux fur with a razor knife. So they would measure and then cut just along the back with a sharp razor knife, and then they would avoid cutting the front of that fur. Just be sure you don't press down too hard when you do that. Okay, so to save a little bit of mess today, I have already cut a 6-inch square for my pom. This makes about a 6-inch pom when it's finished if your pile is approximately 3 inches. Now this is a 6-inch pom versus a 5-inch pom. So I like to use my 5-inch poms for toddler beanies, which I happen to have one on hand, and I think they are a better fit. However, the 6-inch pom looks great on toddler beanies too, so it's my go-to. Okay, so let's get started on making this pom. Again, you're going to be working from the back of the piece. Okay, so for this next step, I'm going to be working on my Fiskars self-healing mat. I'm going to clear a little space here so I can work. And I'm going to be using my rotary cutter. Now, if you've never seen a rotary cutter, this is what it looks like. And what I've done is I've added a perforated blade. And by doing this, I can go around the edge of my piece of fabric and punch holes. So I'm going to start about a 1/4 inch from the edge of my fabric, and I'm just going to work along the edge all the way around. Now, if this is your first time using a rotary blade, what you do is you just press it down and roll it along the line you're going to be working on. Now, if it helps, you can always mark that line with a fabric marker before you start, but I find that it's pretty easy to just work in a straight line with these. This is a step that you probably won't see in most pom tutorials because in reality, you can just get a sewing needle and move on to the next step. But why this is important is that it makes a hole that's large enough for a tapestry needle to fit through. So I don't have to use a sharp sewing needle, which means that I can use a thread that's larger than what would fit in a sewing needle. So my favorite thread to use for this is Bernay Maker Home Deck yarn. It's got a knit cord type of feel to it. And what I'm going to do here is cut about a 24-inch piece of yarn here. And this will give me enough to sew up the pom and also have enough left over to tie. Okay, so here's my tapestry needle. And like I mentioned before, I can use a bulkier yarn because I'm using a tapestry needle. So that was the main reason for using the rotary punch in the previous step. Otherwise, you could just use a sturdy cord and a sewing needle and move on to this step. Okay, so I'm going to pick up my fabric and I'm going to find one of those holes that I punched. What I'm going to do is I'm going to insert my tapestry needle into that hole and I'm going to weave it in and out of the holes along the edge. Now, sometimes they're really easy to find if I can keep working in a straight line, and sometimes I have to look for them just a little bit. And I'll show you a trick to finding them. Next time I find a hole that I can't get through, I'll show you that trick. So once you get to the edge, you're going to turn and you're going to work down the next edge. You're going to keep doing this all the way around. Okay, I'm going to fast forward through this section, not because it takes a long time, but just because it's a little bit boring to watch. So I will meet you where I get stuck at a hole so I can show you how to make them more visible. Okay, so here's a good spot to stop and show you how to find the holes. You just want to give that fabric a gentle tug, and then you should be able to see where that hole's at. Now, like I mentioned earlier, if you decided to skip the rotary punch portion, you could just use a sharp sewing needle, and I suggest a strong cord, like a waxed cord, and you would just stitch around the same way. You just wouldn't have holes that you're working into. You would just use the sharp needle to punch those holes as you go. Okay, so we are to the end of our sewing section. So what we want to do is turn that palm right side out, and we're going to just cinch it just a little bit so you have a little pocket in there. And we're going to take some polyfill stuffing and we're going to fill the palm. So you don't want to use too much stuffing, but you don't want your palm to be empty either. So I like to close it just a little bit and then flip it over and give it a squeeze and see if it's how I want it. I actually want just a little bit more stuffing in here so the palm feels nice and full. So I'm going to open it back up, then I'm going to run across the room really quick and grab some more stuffing, and then I'm going to put just a little bit more. I like to stuff it a little bit at a time so I can get a good feel for how full the palm is. If it's too full, it won't close. If you're planning to make and sell your palms, one good option is to weigh your stuffing. That way all of your palms end up weighing the same amount for shipping reasons. Okay, once your palm is stuffed, you're going to cinch those cords closed. The nice thing about using a bulky cord is that you can pull these tight and not worry about snapping your thread. Now, if you got some stuffing hanging out, just poke that back in there before you cinch it closed. And just be aware, this is a messy process, so you are going to have some loose fur. Then you're going to tie a simple knot with those two hanging cords. Now, the tighter you get this, the more closed your palm's going to look. It is a little bit of a challenge to get those knots nice and tight without getting fur all caught up in them. So do your best and make sure your knots are secure. I like to double knot my palms, and then I like to add one more knot just for extra security. So I move the fur out of the way a little bit and add one more knot before I finish off my palm. One of the reasons I like using the Maker Home Deck yarn is because it's so grippy. Now I give the palm a little shake because it's bound to have some loose fur on it, and then I trim my ends so they're nice and even. And that is it. My palm is finished. Now, the next step in this tutorial should definitely be to clean up your workspace because you're going to be covered in fur. I like to make my palms in batches so I only have to clean up once. Now I'm going to show you how you would use a palm button. If this is your first time using a button to attach a palm to a hat, I think you're going to like this part. So I have these palm buttons from Angie and Britt, and these are kind of cool. They say handmade faux fur palm, remove before washing. And they are wooden buttons. I have my toddler hat right here. I'm going to flip it inside out, and then I am going to use that tapestry needle that I used before to go down through the top of the hat and out the inside. Okay, so once I have it through the inside, I'm going to pick up that button and put it through one of the holes. Then I'm going to repeat with the opposite side of the cord. Now, adding a palm button is actually a really cool addition because it holds the palm on there nice and securely, and it makes sure that you can get it off easily when you want to wash it. Okay, so I'm going to go down the opposite side of that closure and come through the inside of the hat. Then I'm going to use the other hole of the palm button. Now, before I found these fun buttons from Angie and Britt, I actually just used regular oversized buttons. And once you have it on there, you can pull it nice and tight, and then you can just tie it in a knot. I like to use just a regular bow because, like I said, the Maker Home Deck yarn is really grippy. It holds in there really nicely. Okay, so let me get this turned around so you can see it. Now, this is the toddler hat with the 6-inch palm. You can see it's not flopping around at all. It's on there really securely. So adding a button is a really fun touch. And I will show you how easy it is to get it off. You just pull the cords, and of course I tied it in a weird little knot when I pulled it off. But normally you can just untie it, and if it's a little tight, you pull on the button, loosen the knot, and this thing will come right off. And of course it doesn't come off because grippy yarn, like I said. But hey, what's a tutorial video without a few hiccups? So once you get the button off, the pom comes right off. Here's that hat again, and it's covered in fur because I did not clean up before I did that. Well, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope you have fun making your own faux fur poms. I will put a link to my blog post below where I have some information about sourcing your fabric and what to look for. I also have a photo tutorial there, as well as a bunch of free patterns so that you can make some hats to add your poms to. Until next time, happy crafting!